here so I can share this on YouTube for anybody that misses. Right. So with checkpoint 2, right here, it says practice analysis and of structure and development. And then the checkpoint is right here in this box. When you click the link, it should look like this. All right. So Ashley, you can go ahead and pull this up if you're able to on your end. And Jarrett, how you doing? Were you able to register? Did that code work for you?
I tried. No, I think it is work, but I don't have my right email. You know what I'm saying? I'm not in front of my computer right now.
Okay, yeah, I know it's a little trickier on your phone. All right. Well, at the very
Yeah.
least, you can screenshot or copy paste that code. And when when you're back in front of your computer later, you can try and log in again then, or register, I should say.
Yeah, I'm
Um,
gonna get it. But yeah, I screenshotted it.
cool. Yeah, because all the stuff we're doing is on Summit. So, make sure you do get registered. But you can follow along and again, screenshot or anything else that you need to do now. And we are recording, so this will be up on the Yes Philly YouTube channel later today if you want to go back and watch. Okay. And
Okay.
Ashley, I know you've been in here fairly regularly and kind of following along. So some of this should look familiar to you. So what we're doing in checkpoint 2, again, this whole project is called creative nonfiction, right? So it's all about how do we take nonfiction, which is stuff that's real and based on fact, but present in a creative way, right? So what we're focusing on in checkpoint 2 is the way we structure the things we write so that they have um, more of a creative aspect, even though they're still nonfiction, right? And what we did to look at this is read through this story, if you remember, if you were with us, called "The Myth of the Latin Woman" by Judith Ortiz Colfer, which is basically a memoir or a story that the author writes, remembering her time growing up as a Latina woman in America, and it's told using anecdotes. So anecdotes are Right, sorry about that. My Wi-Fi has been acting up lately, but I am back. If you missed it right before I got booted off, I was saying this story that we, excuse me, we're looking at is told using anecdotes. Right. So I was asking, can we refresh our memory? Does anybody have a definition or best guess of a definition for what an anecdote is? Have we heard that word before? Does it ring any bells? Do we know what it might be? Any thoughts or guesses, real quick?
That antidote.
An anecdote, yeah. Any thoughts or best guess as to what that might be? Have we heard that word before? Do we know?
Not really.
All right, no worries. Let me check the chat here just in case, because I know Ashley or a chat warrior. So anecdote is like kind of a short true story that helps to kind of prove a bigger point or tell a bigger story. And so that's why this author uses, anecdotes and reflections in this piece. So by telling all these shorter, true stories from her, experience growing up and reflecting on them, it can illustrate the bigger point or the bigger theme of the story, which is that it can be very hard for a Latina woman to be recognized for her achievements and not just stereotyped because of her looks and because of her culture, right? But despite that, she perseveres and has become a successful author, right? And so, again, by sharing the anecdotes about, like, people singing her songs from West Side Story, which is a popular musical that has a lot of Latin American characters. By doing that, or when she was judged on the way she dressed, in high school and career day because of the way that she was used to dressing culturally, but now that's kind of looked at as, is she doing too much? Is she dressing a little too sexually? Things like that. She shares all of those stories, and they all help to tell one bigger story of, like, hey, this is, what I went through that was very, unfair and, stereotypical. But in spite of that, I'm still successful because I know, I'm staying true to myself, right? So that's what an anecdote is and why it's important and how it can kind of help, you know, with this structure. So what we're doing in checkpoint 2 here, which again, you can find right here on Summit under our class English 4, right, is we're kind of using this story to fill out this checkpoint. So we're going to try to go through the first 2 parts together. And then the last part, I'm going to leave up to you guys to fill in. All right. Now, again, if you weren't with us when we read through the story, that recording is up on the Yes Philly YouTube, so you can always go back there and check it out. But the first, let me get into my demo notebook here. This first, so we have 3 kind of questions to ask about how the story is structured and developed, right? So the first part is asking, how are the anecdotes woven together? What connects them? And what we can say connects these anecdotes, if we look here, is her reflections after each one, right? Because after each anecdote, she's kind of reflecting on, what did this mean and how does it, connect back to this general theme, right? Ooh, that's not what I want. And again, if you have this pulled up on your Summit, feel free to follow along, type in to yours, but I'm typing it to mine. If you're not at Summit right now and you just want to wait and kind of screenshot or watch the YouTube video later on, you can do that as well. We can say the author's reflections connect each anecdote, if I can remember how to spell. Only one N. As they're woven together to paint a picture of the author's life growing up. Okay. What rhetorical devices are used in the anecdotes? Now, this one's a little bit trickier. We haven't talked about rhetorical devices a whole lot. But basically, what rhetorical devices are just strategies that you can use when you're telling a story to kind of make it more entertaining, make it more creative, make it more engaging with the reader. So if we go back and look at some of these anecdotes and we try to match them up with types of rhetorical devices, right? Yeah, here's a pretty good list, right? You know, she has a lot of allusions, which again are references to something from popular culture or from history or anything like that, you know, outside of what you're talking about that can help to prove your point. So every time she's mentioning, um, you know, like West Side Story when she's, you know, when they sing the song about Maria, um, or the other anecdote down here where she's talking about where she's at the hotel and the drunken guy starts singing, you know, calls her Evita and sings, you know, a certain song like "Don't Cry for Me, Argentina," sings certain songs for her. And those are all illusions because she's referencing those things to help prove her point. So we have illusions going on. We have um, some metaphors going on. Right, and we have a lot of descriptive imagery going on. Those are just a couple of rhetorical devices that we can use. All right. And now the big question here, again, like we've talked about, how do the anecdotes connect back to the theme, right? And again, I know this is a little bit tough if we haven't read the story and, you know, you're both kind of in a different spot here, but you know, if you go back and watch that class recording from last week or from Tuesday, I should say, reading through the story, we can see that when she reflects on each of these anecdotes, they're all kind of connecting back to this bigger theme of, you know, stay true to yourself even if, you know, people judge you or stereotype you based on how you look or based on, you know, what your ethnicity might be. All right. Can either of you, you know, relate to that theme? Do you think? Can either of you think of an experience that maybe you had or somebody you know had where they were um, kind of judged or stereotyped, you know, one way based on how they look or, you know, what their ethnicity or their culture was? Can either of you guys, you know, relate to that at all? Do you think?
I think everybody experienced that, to be
I
honest.
think I think so too, Jarrett. Can you be more specific at all? Like, can you think of something off the top of your, and if you don't want to share, that's okay, but can you think of an experience off the top of your head, like that either you or somebody you know maybe went through that's kind of, you know, relates to that theme?
I don't know if it relates to that thing, but I had definitely got stereotyped like a lot from like my jobs and stuff.
Yeah, jobs is a big one, right? How so with jobs, if you don't mind sharing? Just like in the way they hire you or like the position they put you into, some stuff like that.
Yeah, it was more like the positions, and like majority of places I work, I'm always like the youngest. So people like they like look at me different, try to treat me different until I speak up. But first like impressions, people try to like put a stereotype on me. Then I gotta show them like and explain myself.
Yeah, so sometimes they might assume, oh, you're young, you don't know how to do the job, we have to train you, but they might not know that you have
100%.
a lot of experience doing the job, stuff like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. So that's all, you know, like you said, that's all kind of the same thing. So it might not be exactly what she's talking about in this story in terms of, you know, being a Latina woman and, you know, being stereotyped as, you know, over
Oh
sexual.
no, I forgot. I'm sorry. My very first job, I was like one of the only black people in there. Everybody else was like Spanish and
Mhm.
yeah, Spanish and white. So like that was like it was like crazy racism in there. Like crazy.
Just towards you, or like towards like all around?
It was like three of us in there, like three black people. Like it was just like a lot of tension in the air, a lot of injustice things going on. Like that's and I had to leave.
Yeah.
Like so I forgot the topic. That's what I relate to.
Yeah. Well, that's unfortunate to hear. I'm glad you got out of there, but that's a lot of what she's talking about, you know. So you're experiencing it that way on the job, and she's kind of experiencing it, you know, as like a Latina woman growing up, like, you know, they stereotype you into one way, like, oh, you know, Latin, you know, Latina girls probably do this or probably do that. You know, things like that. So it's a very relatable theme. Like you said, while it might not be you know, our experience might not be the exact same, I think you're right. I think in some way, shape, or form, everybody has kind of been stereotyped or been judged based on how they look, or, you know, their ethnic background or their age, like you were saying. Um, you know,
Yeah,
a lot of that goes on um, all the time. You know, that's, you know, and it's happened. You know, it's happened to me too. Like, because I'm a musician, right? But I'm a little bit younger. But the music that you know, I play and sing is a little bit older. We do a lot of like, you know, old, you know, rock and roll and soul music and stuff like that. And it doesn't happen too much anymore. But when, you know, when my band was first starting out, a lot of times people would you know, ask us how we knew those songs, or you know, wonder if we were playing them correctly because they think that we're, you know, too young to be playing or know that type of music. Um, but there's no age requirement on like what, you know, what music you should listen to and when, right? So it's a silly thing to think, but it's again another one of those examples of how people can kind of have those stereotypes. So to answer, you know, when we look at this last question here, I think that's how we can figure that out, is that the anecdotes connect back to the theme because each one illustrates and what's the word I'm looking for? An experience the author had uh, being stereotyped. And welcome to whoever joined us. Hey, Gianni. Being stereotyped because of her ethnicity and culture. But she remained true to herself uh, in spite of that, and became successful. Right? It's a really good way to put that. Right? And kind of relates back to where you were saying, Jared, of like, you know, you knew you had to get out of that job because you knew it was, you know, not a great, you know, workplace. And like you said, you know, they think one thing until you speak up. So, you know, in spite of all this stuff, we're still, you know, working towards being successful, you know, graduating, you know, thinking about what we're doing after high school, all that stuff. Johnny, if you're just joining us, we are on Summit. We're working through checkpoint 2 right here, practice analysis of structure and development. So that's where you can find what we're working on. And we're kind of going through the first couple parts here based on the story that we read last time, the myth of the Latin woman. So hopefully you remember that. And if not, both that class and this class are going to be up on YouTube later today. Okay. So we filled out these first 3 boxes, right? And again, like I said, if you have your checkpoint open, you can feel free to follow along and fill these out. I'll leave it up for a little bit once we're done. Okay. Step 2 here, cognitive skill practice. All right. You only have 20 minutes, so we don't have to worry about the 20-minute part. What this is basically practice in is, you know, how do we take what we talked about up here and put it into kind of essay form? All right. So what we would do is kind of like, fill in these sentence starters, right? Which we've already kind of done up here. So we would say, in the story of the myth of Latin woman, Culver develops the idea that, this is where our theme is going to go, that despite being stereotyped, trying to think of the right word here, around your ethnicity and culture, you can stay true to yourself and become successful through their rhetorical devices of anecdotes, because we know that's how she tells the story, allusions, and metaphors, right? So that'd be a really good paragraph starter, okay? And then the next thing we would do would be to, go back through the story and list some examples. Pick out, here's an example of this happening in the story, and now I can explain it to you in this paragraph, right? Which we don't have to do right now, right? But that would be the next step here. So think about, what, as we get further into the project and we're talking about, the final product, writing critiquing a structure and development paragraph, what we're going to do later on, that's the kind of steps we want to think about taking, right? And how we would continue to write that, right? So the last thing we're going to do here is fill out this chart. And this is what I'm going to leave up to you guys to do on your own, okay? So it says, in the myth of the Latin woman, identify the following key organizing features. So what this box is asking is, what are the features that help to organize this story? And off the top, right off the bat, this should, at least one of these should probably be easy to think of because it's something we've mentioned a lot. Those, short stories that are true stories that kind of help to tell or paint a bigger picture, right? What do we call those? That's, one key organizing feature that we've talked about a lot already today. So that should give you a hint there. All right. And then one powerful anecdote, right? So this is, what's one powerful anecdote? What's one powerful story that she tells in here that kind of stuck with you or really helped to illustrate, her theme of, being stereotyped for her ethnicity, for her culture, but, persevering despite it, right? And, one powerful reflection. So, what's one powerful reflection? So when she kind of sums up that anecdote and kind of gives her thoughts about, what happened and what it means, what's one of those that stuck out to you? Tell me that in the chart here. And then how is that anecdote and that reflection tied back to that theme that we've kind of talked about, up here in the second box. All right. That's what you're going to do to fill out this chart. Okay. So what I'm going to be looking for this next progress report is for this whole thing to be filled out, right? But like I said, the first two parts, I wanted to kind of go through together today to help you guys get started. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave my screen up here for a few minutes so that if you want to copy these down onto your checkpoint to help you get started, you can do that. This class recording will also be up on YouTube later today. And you can find it and follow along there as well, right? So once you get this, copied down, or if you're not, you don't need to copy it down, if you screenshotted it, whatever, then you can try and finish up the bottom part, which is this chart right here, right? Which you should be able to do if you were here following along, reading through the story, or if you have gone back and watched that class recording. And if you need it, to pull examples from, I will put a link to the story in the chat right now. All right. Questions about anything so far?
I don't got no questions. I got a whole understanding of it right now, but I just learned something new today
What's the new thing you learned?
about the rhetorical devices and the anecdotes.
Oh, well, that's good. Then I'm doing something right. Yeah, and those,
100%.
rhetorical devices, anecdotes, those are things we see all the time. We just might not know, that that's what they're called. Um, because we use. Oh, wait, but I cannot find the page on some. All right, actually, I can show you how to get there in a sec. No worries. We use anecdotes, all the time in our everyday speech. Like when you're with your friends and they ask, what'd you do this weekend? I was like, oh, it was crazy. This guy did this, and then this happened. That's an anecdote because we're telling a short story. Or, like to your point earlier, like, yeah, I worked in this job and, I was only one of a few African American people working, so there was a lot of crazy racism. And oh, here's an example of that, and then you kind of tell a story that happened. That's an anecdote too, because you're using that story to show, that bigger, illustrate that bigger point of like, there was a lot of racism going back and forth, when I worked in this job. So those are all things that we use that you see in this story that we also see in a lot of other creative nonfiction stories. Because again, that's kind of the whole point of what we're thinking about here. All right. So real quick, Ashley, or anybody else who is still having trouble, if you're looking for this on Summit, you want to go to our class, English 4, and then you want to go to checkpoint 2 right here, practice analysis, structure, and development, and then click on the link right here in the box, and then it should bring you to the page that looks like this. And then the link to the story, this guy, right, is what I just put into the chat. All right. And again, Jared, don't forget to register for this class on Summit so that I can assign you um, everything that's due. All right.
Yeah, I got it. When I get home, I gotta get back. I log into my email and then uh, log into the classes and stuff.
Sounds good. Sounds like a plan. Ashley, have you been able to? Were you able to pull it up now? Still having trouble? Let me know. All right. And again, if you want to
I'm doing it
screenshot,
now.
I'm sorry, Ashley. Go ahead.
I'm doing it now.
Cool. All right. And again, if you want to screenshot or copy down what I have up here for these first couple boxes, um, feel free to do that now, to help you kind of get started and give you some examples. And then you guys are doing the third part, this chart here, on your own. Okay. So I'll leave this up here for a few more minutes before we wrap up.
Wait, so real quick, so what the YouTube channel just called Yes Philly? Like, this is Yes Philly?
Yeah, if you search Yes Philly, all one word on YouTube, the channel should come up. I can also put a link to it in the chat if that helps too.
Oh, so no, yeah, I should be able to find Yes Philly.
Cool. Yeah, and then that's where you'll find all of our previous class recordings. All right. So if no one still needs this, I'm going to stop sharing my screen. Okay. So we're just about out of time here. We got about 5 minutes left. So again, and I know Gianni, you joined us a little bit late. So if you're still a little bit lost with what's going on, I will be in the Summit Lab this afternoon from 1 to 3. Same link that you used to get to this class if you want to come see me there. But any questions on checkpoint 2, what you need to do? Does everybody understand what we need to do for that checkpoint? And I will try to put a link on Summit to that story as well for you to use. But I did put it in the chat just now as well. Again, any other questions? Cool. All right. Well, that is all I have for you guys today. Remember that I'm going to be looking at this stuff for the next progress report, which is coming out next Wednesday. It's going to be our last one of the year since this is term 4. So please make sure you're trying to get all that stuff done by Monday at the latest. All right. End of the day, Monday at the latest. Okay. Stay safe. Have a good weekend. And if you have any other questions come up, shoot me an email or you can come see me in the Summit Lab. All right. Anything else before we go?
Okay.
All right, cool. All right, thank you guys. Jared, again, good to see you back today. Hope to see more of you. All right, thank you guys, and I will see you on next Tuesday.